A soft, gentle narrative unfolds in a sunlit room where the essence of minimalism, essentialism, frugal living, and slow, simple living blend harmoniously. In this serene setting, the idea emerges that letting go of sentimental items, those items that once carried meaning and memories throughout life, can lead to a journey of emotional liberation and mindful living. The story begins by painting a picture of a life filled with cherished memorabilia from the past, family heirlooms, childhood treasures, and thoughtful gifts from friends and loved ones. These items, while holding a legacy of warmth and personal history, can sometimes crowd spaces, both physically and emotionally, making it challenging to live with clarity and purpose. In the unfolding narrative, a gentle voice explains that holding on too tightly to every memento may cause feelings of guilt and overwhelm, a natural consequence of equating material form with everlasting memory. Instead, the journey recommends a new perspective, one where the real essence of a memory can be preserved without requiring the physical object that once symbolized it. The narrative explains that it is acceptable, even liberating, to release items that no longer actively serve a purpose, transforming clutter into space for new, meaningful experiences. As the light shifts across the room, it becomes clear that every object need not be retained solely out of habit or emotional obligation. The narrative introduces the idea that it is sometimes perfectly fine to set aside physical items, such as treasured gifts, in favor of capturing their significance through alternative means, like photography. With a relaxed yet precise tone, the story gently hints that personal growth often comes through proactive decluttering. Understanding sentimental attachments and the role of guilt. In a quiet corner filled with faded photographs and well-worn keepsakes, the narrative explores the deep psychological ties that bind individuals to their sentimental items. It describes a time when every trinket and token from childhood, every family heirloom passed from one generation to the next, seemed indispensable. The narrative unfolds like a memoir that traces the origins of these strong attachments, emphasizing that each object is imbued with stories, laughter, tears, and milestones. Yet, as layers of time accumulate, it becomes evident that these items, regardless of the affection once held for them, eventually transform into burdens that clutter both living spaces and inner lives. Guilt weaves its subtle influence throughout the process, and the narrative illustrates how an overwhelming sense of obligation can emerge when faced with the task of discarding something dear. It recounts moments when the weight of history and emotional connections have made it feel nearly impossible to let go, even when doing so might pave the way for a freer, more deliberate lifestyle. The story narrates an internal dialogue in which the mind questions whether releasing these items might equate to forgetting important aspects of life, or whether it diminishes the value of past experiences. In this thoughtful exploration, the narrative reassures the audience that guilt is a common, almost instinctual reaction, deeply rooted in cultural expectations and personal memories. The account describes how the emotional challenge of discarding gifts, which are received with gratitude yet become burdens over time, is intertwined with societal pressures that equate sentiment with physical possession. By understanding that guilt is not a failing but a natural part of human experience, the narrative prepares the listener for a mindful re-evaluation. The value of letting go, benefits and imperatives for minimalism. In a bright, airy space, the narrative paints a picture of transformation, where letting go of accumulated belongings creates new room for clarity and intentional living. The scene is set with sunlight pouring into minimalist rooms, where each open surface and cleared shelf symbolizes more than just a tidy space. It represents a newfound relationship with life's essentials. Here, the story explores the idea that physical clutter can become a barrier to emotional freedom, and each discarded item becomes a step towards a simpler, more purposeful existence. The narrative illustrates how releasing the weight of material possessions can lead to a profound sense of liberation. With a calm and assuring tone, the story explains that minimalism is not about erasing the past or disregarding memories. It is about reinterpreting them. The act of letting go is framed as a deliberate choice that honors the meaningful moments rather than clinging to every tangible reminder. Within this setting, personal stories emerge, recounting moments when individuals discovered that by reducing the physical clutter, they also reduced mental clutter, allowing creativity and well-being to flourish. As space opens up, both in living areas and in one's heart, there comes an increased ability to appreciate the beauty of now. The narrative further emphasizes that when items no longer serve a practical purpose or contribute to one's emotional growth, they can gently be released from daily life. In doing so, memories are not lost. They are transformed into mental images and emotions, a process that is both natural and healthy. The beauty of this approach is captured in quiet, reflective scenes, where the act of decluttering becomes a ritual of self-care and reinvention. The story reassures listeners that clutter, whether physical or emotional, should not dictate the pace of life. Instead, embracing minimalism means choosing to surround oneself only with items and memories that continue to inspire and uplift, paving the way for a life replete with clarity, freedom, and renewed purpose. Letting go of gifted items. Why it is okay. In a warmly lit living room filled with soft memories and echoes of laughter, the narrative turns its focus to a frequently challenging subject, the emotional dilemma of parting with items that have been gifted. The atmosphere is one where every object, once received with love and thought, now stands as a testament to past relationships and shared joy. The narrative gently reassures that although items given as gifts carry an inherent symbol of affection, they are ultimately objects that need not retain their physical presence to honor the spirit in which they were given. The story unfolds by bringing to life quiet moments where reflections upon gifted items, ranging from handmade crafts to store-bought novelties, prompt an internal debate. The narrator reveals that each gift, while cherished at the moment of receipt, may lose its functional or emotional relevance over time. Emphasis is placed on the idea that the value of a gifted item exists not solely in the tangible object, but also in the shared memories and sentiments associated with it. The tone remains gentle yet firm, explaining that a shift in perspective, viewing these items as transient symbols rather than permanent fixtures, can allow an individual to let go without the familiar pang of guilt. The narrative illustrates that this transformation is not about devaluing the acts of giving or the relationships themselves. Instead, it is an invitation to recognize that in the pursuit of a minimalist or essentialist lifestyle, reprioritizing personal space and emotional clarity becomes paramount. The story provides vivid imagery of a person thoughtfully wrapping up an item into a memory box or capturing its essence with a photograph, symbolizing that the true significance lies in the thought and love behind it, not in its physical form. In this way, releasing gifted items is presented as a conscious, respectful nod to the past, while embracing a future of streamlined living, one where gratitude and fond memories thrive free from the burden of clutter. Embracing a new memory, the power of photographs to preserve the past. In a quiet moment under the soft glow of afternoon light, the narrative introduces an innovative and thoughtful alternative to holding on to physical mementos. Within a space decorated with carefully arranged photographs and subtle tokens of memory, the story explores how a simple image can encapsulate a lifetime of emotions. The narrative conveys that photographing a cherished item can capture its essence, allowing its memory to live on in a digital or printed archive without the need for retaining every physical detail. Imagine a scene where an individual lovingly arranges a carefully curated pile of mementos on a table, each item given a moment of significance before a camera captures its beauty. The narrative explains that embracing the art of photography does more than preserve an image. It creates a repository of memories that can be revisited at any time. This method transforms the act of decluttering from one of painful loss to a celebration of history, a way to honor the sentimental value of objects while still choosing a more intentional, clutter-free lifestyle. The story paints a picture of a peaceful ritual where each click of the camera encapsulates not just an image, but an emotion, a story, and a distinct moment in time. By converting physical objects into visual memories, the narrative reassures that the essence and spirit of the items remain untouched. Alongside minimalist ideals, this approach serves as a practical means of balancing emotional attachment with the need for a simpler living space. Ultimately, the narrative encourages the acceptance that memories can flourish beyond physical tokens, finding new life as digital impressions or printed keepsakes that evoke the same tenderness as any tangible object. Avoiding common pitfalls, mistakes to dodge during the decluttering process. In a thoughtfully arranged space where strategies for decluttering are shared like timeless advice, the narrative delves into the common mistakes that can derail the process of letting go. Imagery of cluttered rooms and hesitant hands sorting through boxes set the stage for lessons learned over time. The story explains that one of the most frequent pitfalls is the temptation to hold on to items simply because they once held a special place in one's heart, despite no longer serving a practical role in daily life. These objects, burdened by excessive guilt and an overwhelming sense of duty, often lead to decision fatigue and prolonged attachment to the past. The narrative details how the lack of a clear, thoughtful system can hinder progress. It describes moments when an individual, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of mementos, might fall into the trap of procrastination, hoping that, eventually, an unseen force will decide what stays and what goes. A vivid picture is painted of a person sitting amidst a sea of memories, paralyzed by guilt and indecision, unable to recognize that the true essence of these memories rests within the heart rather than within the physical object. The story advocates for the importance of setting personal criteria, defining what truly adds value and which items have simply become relics of an earlier time. It further advises against the tendency to equate physical possession with emotional permanence. Instead, the narrative guides the listener toward proactive steps, suggesting that by establishing clear intentions, the process of decluttering can proceed with confidence and clarity. This careful, respectful approach to letting go ensures that each decision honors the past, while gracefully making room for the future. Communicating boundaries, expressing preferences on physical gifts for special occasions. In a scene marked by quiet reflection and sincere communication, the narrative shifts to the delicate subject of establishing boundaries regarding physical gifts. It describes a setting where individuals, having embraced the principles of slow and simple living, choose to honor genuine relationships by clearly expressing their preferences. The narrative carefully explains that saying no to physical gifts, whether on birthdays, Christmas, or other special occasions, is not an act of ingratitude, but a conscious choice to favor experiences and meaningful interactions over material objects. The image emerges of an individual thoughtfully planning their celebrations, knowing that long after the festive season, the joy of shared moments endures, while clutter fades away. This narrative paints a picture of natural conversations, where family and friends gradually come to understand that the request for non-physical gifts stems from a desire for a calmer, more intentional lifestyle. In that space, the spirit of minimalism gently infuses relationships with a focus on quality time and heartfelt expressions, rather than on accumulating items that eventually burden living spaces. The story suggests that by setting these clear boundaries with compassion and clarity, the process of gift-giving transforms into an opportunity for genuine connection, where emotions and experiences hold far greater value than any physical object. It is a reminder that personal values, when shared honestly, can enlighten others and open the door to a lifestyle that honors both relationships and mindful decluttering. Conclusion and final thoughts. In a final, serene reflection, the narrative concludes that decluttering sentimental items is not a denial of the past, but an affirmation of a life lived with intention. The story emphasizes that letting go of physical clutter uplifts the spirit, preserves cherished memories in creative ways, and transforms guilt into liberating self-care. With an invitation to embrace minimalism as a pathway to renewed clarity and emotional freedom, the narrative gently reminds that living simply and guilt-free paves the way for deeper, more meaningful connections with both our past and our future.